Thank you. I think the title of this session is Water Security. I need from the panelists, what's the meaning of water security for each of you? Because it's a big debate. And I agree totally with Her Excellency Engineer Maysoon about her comments and the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Ali. We got two. Three questions from ladies and two questions from gents.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It has been a very rich, actually, panel and very valuable contributions on all aspects. There are several questions. I'll try to limit myself to just a couple of remarks, asking actually your further input from the panelists. The one, because we heard a lot from different panelists about the role of the private sector and how this can be enhanced and how it can contribute. And now we also heard the intervention of Mr. Mohammed Al-Hmaidi regarding the role of the regulation. I'm just wondering, at regional level, could the role of a watchdog or regional regulatory body be of assistance in terms of providing input and guidance at national level, but benefiting from international and regional experiences? The second part has to do with the regionality of initiatives that several of the panelists mentioned and how this can be of benefit to the region. Just like to draw the attention to a large number of projects, processes, initiatives that are running with the support of bilateral donors as well as multilateral, including also the European Union and different processes under the Union for the Mediterranean framework, and of course the League of Arab States that could also be of benefit in terms of assisting with the water security. And the last part, actually, to Anders, regarding the assessment. Thank you very much for outlining the context. Most valuable. Just a couple of questions on whether the remaining part of the water sector is going to be covered further to the water services, so not only water supply and sanitation. Whether there's going to be a regular update, because you said it's actually a forward-looking tool to identify areas of intervention. And because you did mention at the beginning that synergies are going to be sought with other processes, how is this going to be done with work that is currently carried out? And I would like, of course, to offer the support of GWP Med in whatever form we can in terms of the data collection and the material, and also the cases available at the Global Water Partnership Toolbox. Thank you.
The question, the presentation.
3 minutes.
Thank you. I would like to share my common concern with my colleague who mentioned something about the importance to recognize the issue of transboundary water at the regional level, especially concerning Syria, Iraq, particularly. You know, Iraq is facing a big challenge currently, fighting against ISIS, and there is a big risk targeting also the infrastructure of the dams, and the Mosul Dam is now a big risk, might cause a threat to more than 1,000 people in Mosul, although now there is a big war there. Anyway, I mean that there is always big challenges facing Iraq, and I would like to ask if also at the borders with Iran, now the water is not anymore flowing through the borders from the Iranian side, and that causes a stoppage of water flow from the tributaries that were feeding the Tigris River. And now we are having in Iraq, in the Shatt al-Arab, which is the big river in the southern part, and it was a soft water and drinkable water resource, but now it's turned into a very saline water source, and this also caused a big problem to the whole, southern region. The Euphrates is also facing similar, challenges. But I would like to ask if anyone who is now currently attending this conference, like the Water Bank, the USAID, others who are mostly funding and supporting programs in the region, because always Iraq is absent from any regional program. This is what we recognize. I was working with the United Nations, with UNDP particularly in the 2 years ago, and there was a project funded also by US DOS, and it was focusing on establishing a water council. And maybe Dr. Hammou, he knows about it. We were also having a delegation visiting Egypt about that, to learn about the experiences in Egypt, particularly their experience with Ethiopia, in the terms of water diplomacy, water security. So there's a lot need, a huge need. I don't want to mention everything. Also, the climate change is now affecting and hitting the country terribly. The drought is every year hitting the country. So there are so many things. Is there any program planned by the big, partners in the world community to target Iraq in any, huge program? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will start with Anders answering the questions about the unrest, about the water in the infrastructure that has been used as a weapon, and then if there is any win-win situation within the Arab initiatives. And Yuri, you need also to define part of the exercise for the group to define what's water security, and then we will talk about the any initiatives in relation to Iraq.
Great, and all that in 1 minute, I guess. Thank you for the comments and the questions. Very good and well taken. Let's start with the wave of refugees, Dr. Mayzoun. We are addressing that in the report. That's what I was terming as fragility, the knock-on effects of the fragile situations. So looking at, for example, what that means for Lebanon and Jordan in relation to the influx of refugees in Jordan. Maybe I didn't bring it out that clearly. It's being brought out in the report. Your second point on ISIS use and it's actually not only ISIS, but primarily ISIS, using water as a weapon and targeting water installation. I didn't mention it. It's in the report. We are recognizing exactly what you're saying. It's in one way a new trend that one needs to be aware of, an ugly trend. So we're recognizing that, but thank you for bringing it up. Win-win cooperation between looking at Israel as an inspiration, although there are also many, and I think that was brought up during the panel discussion about the innovative technologies and efforts that are being exerted in the Gulf, for example, which obviously has good possibilities to be transferred to the other Arab countries. Let's see, there was the question from Anthi. Yes, the assessment. Yes, it looks broader on water services. We can talk bilaterally, but yes, it does. Regular updates. That's a good question. I can't respond to that one. I mean, it'll be a publication, but we will follow it closely, and also depending on the feedback we're getting at the country level, but also at the regional level, we'll have to respond to the countries, our clients, and about what is the best way to take this forward. So that's an open question, an open response, and I don't know fully the answer yet. How is synergies going to be addressed? It'll be a case by case. We are aware and looking into how we best synergize with different partners. We are working with the League of Arab States, for example, being the regional institution. We're looking for other partnerships as well, obviously, to try to assist where we can and where it makes sense to what is already ongoing in the region. It's not to start something new, but rather to complement. The exact modalities will have to be worked out. engagement with Iraq, just finally. We are engaging at the national level with the Iraqi government about ways to support in the water sector. That's ongoing. It has been ongoing. We have had missions going to your government in Baghdad to discuss it. We in the report and the assessment, of course, we're not only looking at the Jordan Basin. We are looking at that, but we're also looking at the Euphrates, Tigris, including Iraq, including Iran, and the consequences of the interactions and what can be done there as well. We'll be happy to take that work forward in partnership with our clients, and Iraq being one of them. Thank you.
Thank you. I need to go back to my son about, I'm going to talk about the regional project. The situation with the water a little bit is not an easy from economic point of view. But you did mention electricity. Yes, there is a good initiative within the Arab world. Next October, in 6th of April, or 7th of April probably, the Arab League will sign the first memorandum of understanding to create Arab market for electricity. We recognize the reality. There is unrest of some of the Arab world, but that does not prevent us. We will take it at a stage where there is a possibility we could. At this stage, we have in the North Africa, there is a connection between a number of countries, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco also connected with Europe. Within the GCC, we have electricity flow from Kuwait to Oman. There is a potential discussion now with the Jordanian electricity power to link the Jordanian electricity power with the GCC network. So discussion is undergoing. A memorandum of understanding was signed last year. The technical people, they work in, but we will, in the electricity market, we would like to work with a low profile until we don't know about the feasibility study. So yes, there is a project. Transmitting water in a pipeline is not an easy exercise. It take a lot from hygiene, from economic value. But if we manage to transfer electricity, the technology will allow. That is not the case with electricity. So this is, we're proud about this project within the Arab world. And the Arab League and the electricity ministerial committee, they are going to sign that agreement on the 6th of April in Cairo. So this is then we could back about the define of the security of water of security later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Hammou, there was a question about the private sector and the regulation and whether the same efficiency to government sector will apply and who's going to pay for the volume of water.
Well, actually, there was quite some experience in regulating the contracts with the private sector in urban water supply for years. And many experts have pinpointed that there was a weakness from the negotiating parts in the public sectors. And after years, the government has realized that there were quite some deficiencies in the contracts. And that knowledge has been used in the contracts in Sebt El Gardan. That is a new thing. That is an agricultural irrigation scheme with a different type of contracts. It was focusing on physical saving of water, full cost recovery, and the role of the state in the capital investment, in the input capital investment, yes. But the argument was, if we are subsidizing farmers that are using the money from the states and not using the water efficiently, let's give the same support and recover later on instead of investing in the public irrigation systems that are not efficient. So the cost recovery was an incentive to go for another experience with the Qatari investors in Morocco for the 10,000 hectares. I would like to come back to Saad ميسون الزعبي في موضوع التعاون الإقليمي ولماذا يتم ربطه عادة على الأقل على مستوى عمل بعض المؤسسات بوجود إسرائيل كطرف في هذا التعاون. أنا أعتقد هي أجندة بتاع المنظمات أكثر من أي حاجة تانية. ولماذا لم ينجح التعاون العربي مستقلا عن وجود إسرائيل؟ هذا سؤال كبير. يعني أعتقد أن التكامل الاقتصادي العربي كان حلما من الستينات ولا زال. وأعتقد أن ما تم على مستوى السياسات من توحيد الاستراتيجيات، فهناك استراتيجية عربية للمياه ولكنها وثيقة استرشادية غير ملزمة للحكومات. النقطة الثانية أن الحديث عن التعاون الإقليمي لا ينبغي أن نستعظم شأنه، ولكن لا ينبغي كذلك أن نستصغر شأنه، لأن لا يمكن تصور إمكانيات هائلة على مستوى إقليمي لا يستفاد منها للحد الساعة، سواء بالنسبة للأمن الطاقي أو الأمن الغذائي أو الأمن المائي، وهي مدخل. يعني أنا أعتقد أن في المستقبل سيكون التقدم في هذا الاتجاه بالضرورة ليس بالاختيار. ثم الوضع السياسي العام وطبيعة العلاقات السياسية داخل البلدان العربية أو بين الدول العربية ليست دائما في أحسن حال. فكل هذه العناصر وإلى حد بعيد تم استصغار شأن دور القطاع الخاص في تحريك التعاون العربي المشترك، توحيد التعريفة الجمركية، توحيد سياسة النقل بين الدول العربية والتجارة البينية. كل هذه العناصر موجودة كشعارات، ولكن على مستوى الواقع أعتقد أن ينبغي تحيينها بفكر جديد، بفكر يعطي للقطاع الخاص العربي، طبعا مع إطار تشريعي واضح ومنصف، يعطي للقطاع دور أكبر حتى تتبعه السياسة بدل أن ننتظر السياسة حتى يتبعها الاقتصاد. وأعتقد أن هذه تحديات تتسع أو تتجاوز قطاع المياه، ولكن القطاع المياه للأسف يتأثر بها سلبا. وشكرا.
شكرا دكتور حمو. There were two remaining questions, one about the definition of water security, which if you allow us to handle it at the lunchtime, and there was a comment here about
explain. No?
A note from the organizers up there. They are pointing at us saying you have to leave the room because they are preparing for the next session. And there was just a moment please. And there was a comment here about whether it's possible for the regional collaboration, but we still got 5 minutes here. I would like to invite my colleague Dambuzzo, who will be wrapping up the session. Dambuzzo, she works for the World Bank as specialist.
بس في سؤال من الدكتور سعيد. خلاص.
Okay, can I go ahead? Yeah. Okay, I know I'm standing between us and lunch, so I will try to do this quickly. It was a very good session, and I think one way to sort of take away some main messages from this session is to look at the challenges that we heard for water security and the opportunities. So to the question of what is water security, it's both a challenge and an opportunity. So on the challenges, we heard from Anders about the results of this regional water security assessment, and I'm sure none of this is new to anyone in this room. But some of the challenges are the increase we see in groundwater stress, the low water productivity in the region, the lack of transboundary cooperation, despite the fact that this is a shared resource, and the fragility and internal displacement that we're seeing from some of the conflicts in the region. And then we heard from the other panelists, they added to this list, Engineer Zainab talked about the Jordan River, the 97% reduction in the historical flow of the Jordan River, issues of salinity. We also heard from Dr. Al-Neyadi about the fact that we need to look at the two groups in the region. You have the groups that are very reliant on, that are very low renewable water resources, and they're very reliant on desal and groundwater. Then you have the group that has a lot of rivers and surface water, but that is declining. Now, We also heard from Dr. Majdalani about the findings of the regional climate modeling they did in UNESCWA, and that confirms some of the impacts of climate change in terms of less rainfall, increased temperature, and the challenges of water quality and poor water management. She also emphasized that coastal areas in the region are going to be at greater risk of these changes. The second part of the presentation Anders gave was on the services side, and that even though this is a region where many countries have quite high access to water supply and sanitation, there are issues of intermittency, as Dr. Majdalani reminded us, the issues of poor water quality, and as Dr. Laamrani pointed out, the very fact that water is not valued. And he mentioned that, you know, there's no price for water, but there is a cost. But we are not seeing this reflected in the water prices in the region. And we also heard from Dr. Majdalani about the importance of sanitation, which is often forgotten when we talk about water security. Now, the third pillar of water security that Anders addressed was on the risks. And here it's important to emphasize the economic risk, because we're very aware of the physical risks in terms of scarcity and so forth. But the risk, for instance, the 70% of GDP in the region is exposed to water security related risks. The fact that solar pumping could lead to an increase in groundwater abstraction, and that the cost of inaction is a potential 6%, minus 6% in GDP impact. And as Dr. Neyadi mentioned to us, you know, we are very aware of the challenges, but what can we do about it? What are the opportunities? And here the panelists had several different, very encouraging examples of the opportunities for water security. So Anders mentioned, first of all, the need to reduce agricultural water withdrawals, the potential for non-conventional water supply sources, the importance to build consensus and emphasize innovations, to learn from the region, to learn from outside the water sector. We had an excellent presentation from Dr. Neyadi, who, if I counted correctly, provided us with 7 supply-side solutions. And these were very interesting, innovative technologies, such as the use of sorry, I'm blanking out a little bit here, but cloud seeding, desalination, improving the efficiency of desalination, using aquifers as a strategic reserve for desalination, using spring water, expanding desal outside of the Gulf, and using R&D to see how contaminated groundwater can be cleaned up and used in agriculture. And then the other one was treated wastewater for agriculture, which could actually put less pressure on water resources and to free up those water resources for drinking water. So those were 7 very concrete innovations that are being piloted in the UAE. But he was very clear in emphasizing the importance of research and development, that this needs to be pushed a lot more so that we can identify these technological solutions. He mentioned the importance of working with the private sector, and he also mentioned the importance of, you know, it's good to have all these technological solutions, but are they feasible? And importantly, are they commercially feasible? And Dr. Majdalani mentioned some very good work that UNESCWA is doing. They're trying to push attention on climate change adaptation, because as we know, when we talk about climate change, a lot of it is about mitigation, which is more on the energy side, but water is the only sector that can really do a lot on climate adaptation. She mentioned that importantly, a lot of the countries in their NDCs are starting to put adaptation more and more to the forefront, but she also reminded us that the geopolitics matter, and that we cannot overlook the issues of lack of cooperation on transboundary issues, the fact that certain water departments that are dealing with transboundary issues have more wiggle room, there's less cooperation and sharing of data. Engineer Zainab, though, talked to us about what's happening on the Jordan River with the master plan, the plan to rehabilitate the Jordan River. And importantly, she mentioned this cooperation between EcoPeace and between Jordan and Israel and Palestine, and that there are 127 interventions that have been proposed under this Jordan River master plan. Now, I know later in the Q&A, a lot of people in the audience have mentioned the fact that we should not look beyond regional cooperation as just Jordan, Israel, and Palestine, and certainly there could be other examples. But what's happening with the Jordan River Master Plan is a reminder that an NGO and different countries, different ministries can work together to concretely address this situation with the deterioration of the Jordan River. Now, Dr. Abu Talib mentioned also the importance of creating healthy interdependencies, and she talked a lot about the nexus, that yes, it's about water security, but it's also about energy security. And we cannot overlook the potential of using solar energy in the water sector, trading in energy and water. And this was followed up by Dr. El Neyadi talking about the MOU on the Arab market for electricity. So even though we struggle with cooperation on transboundary waters, the energy sector shows us an example of how you can have regional cooperation on energy and energy trading despite all the challenges of fragility and conflict and so forth. Now, going back to the issue of valuing water and how it's an issue that countries are not valuing water enough, Dr. Laamrani offered us a lot of bright spots, a lot of good examples of where you are starting to see water pricing reforms, notably in the GCC countries. But importantly, he mentioned that you have four runners, if we can so call them, like Morocco, that is actually starting to have pricing reform in irrigation. And he mentioned this very interesting example of the PPP in Morocco, where you have farmers paying up to 10 times the price that's offered for public service provision of irrigation. So it is possible. It is possible to meet both the water savings and the cost recovery, as he said, and as Morocco is demonstrating. But Dr. Laamrani also reminded us that water pricing reform is difficult because you need to balance both the economic side of the reform, but also the equity considerations. But here too, we have some interesting examples, notably with the use of these smart cards to manage demand, to provide free water up to a certain level, and then the consumer pays for the rest. So this is important to start bringing into play some of those signals in terms of valuing water. He also reminded us that it's important to look outside the region and to look at examples like Singapore that is very successfully using technology and balancing that with affordability and equity considerations. And finally, he reminded us of the 4 R's, which is the research for reducing, reusing, and recycling water. So that gives us a useful framework to look at this issue as well. Now, we didn't have a lot of time for